A few years ago, I was playing a gig in King's Cross in London, and the morning of the show I recorded a demo of a song called Breaking Up the Fight. It was all about the responsibilities of being a grown-up and looking after the people that you love. And the reaction I got that night playing it for the first time made me think, okay, maybe I should record this. And since then I've been in London and Norwich and Suffolk, and I've ended up with 2 versions of the same song. So I thought what I should do is speak to some of the people who helped me record those 2 versions and try and work out how I got here. So this is the story of a song, Breaking Up the Fight.
Shut up! My phone! I should have put you on silent! Ah! We had that old version, and that was the kind of the super twee. Like, really, don't know what was up with that sound. We recorded the bass line through the worst bass amp ever. Don't know why we did it that way. It made it sound, I don't know, it sounded awful, but kind of cool as well.
Yeah, are you going to record your end of the conversation? I kind of remember, I remember you coming round to my flat. Do you remember, like, it was one of the first times we'd worked together, you came round to my flat and, like, played me through the songs, just sat up in my living room. And that was one of those songs, and because you were playing it just guitar, I just really liked the space in it, and I thought it was really nice. And I don't actually know if I heard the more kind of upbeat rhythmic one. I don't know if I ever actually heard it. The guitar part and the vocal is what you were playing live, so it's getting that across on the recording to make sure that although it wants to be its own thing, when you hear it you're not like, what the hell is this? I don't recognise this. You know, you want to feel familiar with it, and for those people that it's in, you play it live, and for yourself as well, you want to have that familiarity, that attachment to the piece of music as it was before. I think space is like one of the most important things when you're producing something. Like I always think of my best ideas when I'm like at home and I'm just listening to it coming out of my phone or out of a laptop or something, and I like mishear something. And I'll be like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's like a rhythm. Oh, hold on, I can do that. I can put that in there. That makes sense, actually. And like, then when I go back to it, I put it in, and it's like, oh, that's great, yeah. But without that space and that time away from actually working on the track, it's really hard to get that. So yeah, I totally agree. It's nice just to keep a fresh ear on everything. Like, if you take a bit of time on things, then every time you approach it, you've got a fresh ear. It's good. Alex had done a really good job of the arrangement, and with strings typically I find it's not so much the tone of the strings that is important, it's like the arrangement and the way that the players play together with one another.
How do I approach the sound? So it's quite hard to take it seriously when I'm just being a twat on my own. We recorded the strings in my old flat in Islington, a very tiny little shoebox of a place, with Fifi Homan on cello and Phoebe Fulbrook on violin. Fifi and Phoebe. I mean, I generally, when I'm writing for strings, I always write with a piano, because I can't play strings, which is hilarious considering how much I write for them. But yeah, I'm always thinking of my left hand is my cello and my right hand is my violin, and that's always a great place to kind of start. But every project is different. Every artist is different that I've worked with, and they all come to it in different ways. I try to kind of really fit into how they work. I'm often attaching them to something that's already been made. So it's less about kind of being integral to the composition and more, you know, I don't want to say afterthought, but also it's always important to think of like hierarchy in songs, in my opinion. And the hierarchy really went voice, guitar, and then everything else. But then later on in the track, there's a bit toward the end where the vocals and the violin really start to kind of counter melody with each other, which is something I'm very keen on, is sort of putting my own little embellishments of the melody on it, rather than it just necessarily following the chord progressions. It's hard with string arrangements sometimes, especially for singer-songwriters, where you want to add something but you never want to distract, and that line can be quite thin sometimes, and I probably cross it quite regularly.
The other sound I really like is the little octave piano things we put in.
I've been watching them all day.
Kind of like very dainty there. Bing, 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 bing. You recorded my dad's really old guitar. It's really scratchy. It doesn't sound great on a lot of things, but it sounded really good for that as a kind of like a loop. You know, there's a lot of like tape delay and stuff on it now, and it's a little bit more sort of dreamy and echoey in places.
Are you giving up? Are you giving?
It's kind of like those BVs and those atmospherics and those sounds kind of just sort of get to sort of sit in the back of it a bit, which is nice. That was great. I was just really glad that we got to finish the song.